All right. All right. Here we are live. Sunday Night Live. Welcome to Sunday Night Live on this planet. Turn that off. Where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. Let's fix this a little bit. Sunday Night Live. Yeah. How can we fix this? All right, there we go. Yeah, so Sunday Night Live. Welcome to Sunday Night Live, Planet Earth. Monday morning live, some parts of Planet Earth. And let's get started. Perfect. Okay, cool. All right. People on Instagram, fantastic. Yeah, here we go. Morning from South Thailand. Yay. Andrea, South Thailand. Where in South Thailand? Not able to connect. Nancy, you're not able to connect on Facebook. Try Instagram or YouTube or something. Okay. Can't join on Facebook. Hammy, is there anything happening with Facebook? Why can't people join? Huh. All right. Well, here we are. Sunday Night Live. And to okay. All right, so let's just my voice is clear. Very yes. Okay, so Mike Odinger, you don't have a doctor. You're very lucky. Unless you have a real doctor, they're hard to find. Can I address DMSO? Pamela, the fasting clinic in Thailand is being constructed right now, so we're not quite up and ready. And yeah, Michigan. Okay, cool. Oh, not far from Krabi. Wow, so you're up. Wow, so Andreas, you're up there. That's beautiful up there. Are you in Phang Na? Anyway, fantastic. Just as a reminder, the it's too cold because I have the air conditioning on, not because it's cold here. So just as a reminder, the format, we're going to answer some pre-submitted questions for the first hour. The second hour, we're going to take spontaneous questions from here, and that's it. We have three groups: CFC group, chronically fermenting cells, which is what some people call cancer, but it's chronically fermenting cells. There's no cancer. There's no such thing as cancer. Remember, it's an astrological sign. That's all it is. Okay, just keep that in mind. So we call them chronically fermenting cells because we like to speak the truth, and that's the truth. That's what they are. Anyway, we have these three groups: CFC group, the parasite group, and the health and healing group. And the health and healing group is the lowest, least expensive. It's every other week we get to meet on Monday in the U.S., Tuesday here in the East part of the world, Eastern part of the world, not East Coast, Eastern part of the world. And for us, it's Tuesday. So like for example, today it's Monday morning and not Sunday night. So, uh, seeing nothing but chat. I don't know. Facebook, I don't know why that's going on, but Hammy, I guess you said there's no problem with Facebook, right? So, anyway, um, and the Parasite Group, we meet every Monday, U.S. time, Tuesday morning, and then the CFC Group, we meet Mondays and Wednesdays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah, and plus there's a lot of other content you get on the day after our first meeting, which will be on Tuesday in the U.S., Wednesday here, is Vanessa, uh, our lady that does everything, he, everything from yoga to fasting to um, meditation, and she's a health coach. She's a nutritionist, and she and Darren, he's our kinesiologist, a physiologist who gets us inspired to move and get off our ocoles, and that's it. And then we're going to have Tenson's going to come on once or twice a month and lead us through some different meditations. So it's pretty fantastic. In addition, you get to have access to all the webinars and things that we've done that are not available online. So we're on all the platforms, TikTok and Twitter at Dr. Thomas Lodi MD, Dr. Thomas Lodi MD, Dr. Thomas Lodi MD. The rest of them, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc., are all at Dr. Thomas Lodi, no MD at the end. All right, and that includes Rumble and X, and all of them. And you can also stream on our website at you go to drlodi.com/live, and then you'll be able to there. Okay. So anyway, please like, follow, share this live, and subscribe to our channel so you'll receive notifications every time we go on or there's a new post. All right. Very good. And um, let's get this. Okay, here we are. So let's get into it. Let's get into some questions. And this is from Michelle. The topic is breast CFCs. And the question is, Dr. Lodi, in support of tumor elimination reduction, do you recommend switching between let me shut this off for a minute. Okay. Dr. Lodi, in support of tumor elimination reduction, do you recommend switching between mebendazole and fembendazole every 21 days in response to the CFC's life cycle, 21 days, and to ward off multi-drug resistance genes? Do you recommend the Dr. Jen Simmons 3D breast acoustic CT technology coupled with her proposed biological metabolic evaluation for breast tumors that have not been biopsied? Okay, so let's take those questions. For tumor elimination reduction, switching between mebendazole and fenbendazole every 21 days, absolutely not necessary. There, one or the other. If you switch, it's okay. If you don't switch, it's okay. But please keep that in mind. So these are, they're in a class of drugs called benzimidazoles, and they do pretty much the same thing. They block the tubulin, the kind of the inside the cell, intracellular, like almost like it's a moving skeletal system. And it gives, somebody's calling me, they don't know I'm on a live stream. And let me just tell her. Okay. So there's no need to change between mebendazole and fenbendazole. The bizarre thing about these two particular uh, benzimidazoles, and there's also albendazole, which is recommended at uh, for certain parasites. The truth is, they all do the same thing, and the bizarre thing is that somehow they decided that fenbendazole would be for animals and mebendazole would be for humans, forgetting that humans are what? What are we? Plants? No, 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 we're not plants. We're minerals. We're rocks, mountains. No, 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 we're not mineral. Animals is the only thing left. I guess we're part of that. What does that mean to be an animal? It means you're moving about. You're a biological entity that is moving about and interacting with the world, whereas plants don't move about and interact with the world. So it's very different. But that's the class we happen to fall into. But anyway, so they arbitrarily, with in quotes, those the people that are engineering the what's going on. I'll leave it at that. They've decided that fenbendazole is for animals. So as a consequence, all the research they've done with animals has been with fenbendazole, and you don't see much with humans. So when they say they have no evidence, that's true. They have no evidence because they haven't investigated. And then the mebendazole is the same. They haven't done that with animals, and they do it with humans, and so they have data on that. All right. So the whole idea is separating them. But the answer is no. You can switch them at 21 days, or you cannot, and it doesn't matter. But I just think it makes more sense to find one or the other, and just stick with it, because they really they do the same things. Not only do they block this tubulin, which again, if you don't have the tubulin, if they don't have that cytoskeleton, it's called cyto. CYTO always means within, means cell. Okay, cytology, the study of cells. um, Cytotoxic is a medication that is going to be toxic to cells, all cells. Um, anyway, the cytoskeleton is, in addition to that, these uh, benzimidazoles also actually block specific metabolic pathways that are necessary for the CFC to survive. So, and that's why we see incredible results. There was a recent study, I think I might have shared it last week, where they had 197 people, I think initially, with various with CFCs in various locations, whether it was ovarian, breast, prostate, pancreas, and they had all been on, even though they're all doing various other types of treatments, they they were all taking 25 milligrams of ivermectin and 250 milligrams of benzol a day, which are relatively low doses. And in spite of that, 48.5% something had either the tumors shrunk or were gone. No NED, no evidence. I hate those acronyms, but that's what they couldn't find. All right, so but that's pretty good. That's almost 50%. That's you don't see that with anything else. So regardless of what other things they were doing, whether it was surgery and chemo and or they were just doing whatever, um, uh, the one thing they were doing, but so none of those uh, uh, modalities in and of themselves would have that effect of almost 50% shrinking or gone. No, no. Um, and um, yes, okay, they would not have that. All right, but when you add it up to people that where it didn't grow, but it didn't shrink, then you're up to like 84%. So that's pretty fantastic. And that's a study that came out, and that was with mebendazole. Can Instagram hear me now? Instagram, hear me now? Hello, hello. Amy, can they hear me now? Can Instagram hear me now? Hello, hello. No. Wait a minute. Excuse me, everyone. I'm trying to figure out why Instagram can't hear me. Let me close other apps. There's no other apps. All right, I closed everything. There's nothing else. Can you hear? 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 And still no sound on Instagram, Facebook is fine. Jeez. Can you hear me now? Yes? The answer is yes? Yes. Okay, good. Well, you're right, Hammy. It was closing those other everything else. Okay, good. Or maybe I just need to speak up and stop whispering. That's what I'm gonna do. All right, I'm gonna speak up now so everyone can hear me clearly. Um, and now, with regards to the other part of your question, oh, and TikTok. I forgot about you guys. Welcome back. I'm so glad that that the powers that be allowed us to interact again. That's very nice. I'm very happy about that. So welcome. Yep. And hang in there, you guys. I know you like to switch every 3 seconds, but give it a little more than 3 seconds. Because if you're gonna tell the truth, it's not gonna be blah, 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 blah. I'm gonna have to go a little bit beyond that. Okay. So listen. All right. Anyway, so in response to the other part of your question, Michelle, about the multi-drug resistant genes, they get turned on. So that we know that with CFC. So when a CFC becomes resistant to a particular drug they're using, with cytotoxic drug, chemotherapy, the cell has ways of pushing it out, and um, so the poison can't stay in long enough. So remember, the cells never become used to the poison. These are poisons. They're going to disrupt things. So the way they become resistant is they're able to push them out quickly, faster than you can put them in, and that's what they call resistance. Well, this doesn't happen with the parasitic medications. It's a completely different story. So that it's not even applicable in these situations. Now, with regarding Dr. Jen Simmons, who I love her, she's an amazing woman, doctor, has brought so much to integrative oncology. It's just we're all blessed that she's able to that she's devoting her time, because she used to be a surgeon, and surgeons make a lot of money, and she said, "Forget that. I want to help people." So yay, Dr. Simmons. Um, anyway, her 3D breast acoustic CT technology is fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. And it's certainly the way to go if you want to monitor your breast, um, in any situation, whether you haven't had any problems yet, and you want to you're just checking, or you have had problems, you want to see progress. Anyway, it's far. I mean, the mammogram will cause problems, and it's not even that accurate. It gives you some vague information that you get elsewhere, like you get more from an ultrasound, a breast ultrasound. So breast ultrasounds are good because they again they're not causing any physical damage, and actually they use breast ultrasounds when the mammogram is equivocal. They're not sure what it means. They'll use that to confirm it. So I don't know why they don't just use that for a screening, but they don't. But anyway, what she's doing is even beyond that. So yeah, I mean, for a more accurate and non-invasive, non-toxic screening device and or monitoring device, it's fantastic. Now, with regarding to her biological metabolic evaluation, um, that have not been biopsied, I'm not even sure what that is, so I can't comment on it. But they have not been biopsied. And remember, biopsies, we do know without a doubt, cause metastasis. Let me see if I can find let me uh let me see. I want to find this one study. I've got to share this with you. So um just a moment. Give me a moment here. I wish we were all on Zoom so I could share the screen and show you Uh, Here we go. Here's a study published in 2023, uh, and it's called "Needle Biopsy Accelerates Pro-Metastatic Changes and Systemic Dissemination in Breast CFCs." They use astrological signs, but CFCs, implication for mortality by surgery delay. Anyway, in this study, I just want to here give you their conclusion. It says in the abstract, it says, therefore, we conclude that needle biopsy of estrogen receptor positive BC, breast CFC, provokes progressive pro-metastatic changes, which may explain the mortality risk. So anyway, that's that. And uh, there are other ones. Let me see. Okay, here's another one. This one's published in 2017. It's in a journal called from the Journal of the American Cancer Society. It's called the Cancer Cytopathology. CYTO is cell, pathology is adaptive physiology that they're calling pathology. But anyway, core needle biopsy of breast CFCs is associated with a higher rate of distant metastasis 5 to 15 years after diagnosis than uh, a fine needle biopsy, a fine needle aspiration. All right. Okay. So anyway, and the reason for all of this, let's get back to where we were. Okay, there we are. Yeah. Okay, and the reason for this is that let me just explain something about tumors. When now remember what a tumor is. What the cells are, they're chronically fermenting cells. The reason they're fermenting is that what has happened is they've lost their ability to use oxygen that goes through the mitochondria. All right, so they've lost 60% of their mitochondria. Now they have to change operating systems to survive. So they switch over to fermentation, or which is called glycolysis, um, and uh, uh, and that's a very primitive, fundamental way of producing energy, just fermenting glucose, um, fermenting sugars. And but it's very inefficient. You only get two energy packages called ATP for every glucose instead of 38 ATPs for every glucose. So significantly difference, 19 times less efficient at producing energy. Therefore, in order to survive, it needs 19 times more fuel, more glucose. And that's why they do PET scans, etc., because to look at the glucose uptake. Um, so, what was my point? Um, anyway, uh, this is what CFCs are. And they've done that to survive. And so they're fermenting. And in order to ferment, in order to be successful, they sort of silence this gene and upregulate this gene, and they make all these what are called epigenetic changes. Epigenetics just means it's not genetics, it's not the genes. What it does is it silences them or wakes them up, which is a normal part of biology. I mean, that's how our bodies form organs when we're an embryo. When you're an embryo, remember the original cell in an embryo, the sperm and egg come together. You've got one cell with this one DNA, and it splits into two. They have the same DNA, and then they split into four, and then they split into eight, and they split into 16, 32. It keeps doubling, and they all have the same exact DNA because they're just doubling. But at some point, this group of cells over here turns down, silences all the genes except for liver, and it becomes a liver. This group silences the genes except kidney. So that's called differentiation, but it's epigenetic changes. Epigenetic means the genes that are going to be expressed, right? Not all genes are being expressed. Not in your skin is not expressing heart, right? Okay, so that's very simple concept. So um, so when the cell has to make um, uh, it makes these epigenetic changes where it supports all the genes that are going to push metabolism towards fermentation, and it turns down all the cells that would push it towards oxidative phosphorylation through the mitochondria. That's what happens. It makes those changes. So now that it's made these epigenetic changes, it's modified itself, self-modified, and it can survive. So it's a chronically fermenting cell, and and that's what exactly what it is. Um, yeah. Now, so clearly, think about it. If knowing this, you would say, well, listen, what I need to do is to make sure I can get my, I lost 60% of the mitochondria. That's why it's having to ferment. Let me bring them back. So that would really be the intelligent path to take. How can I stop, uh, um, damaging cells so that they have to ferment? Number one. Number two, how can I restore the mitochondria sufficiently so that it doesn't have to ferment, the ones that are there? And that should be the goal, because that's really what's going on metabolically on a fundamental biochemical level, um, cellular biological level. That's fundamentally what's going on, and that's what works, right? You don't just blast it, because just blasting it is not going to help. If think of someone who's got acne and they keep they keep having new pimples. Some of them are really hard cystic pimples, and some are, and they just pop them. So you pop them, and they keep coming, because it's not any individual or any group of pimples that is the problem. The problem is what's causing them to happen. So if the person with acne does not change their diet, get their hormones balanced, restore their life to healthy life, it'll never stop. They'll never stop coming. So you've got to deal with the cause. This is not brilliant. It's not brilliance. It's not like, you know, it's just common sense. It's just, and you could ask an 8-year-old child, hey, here's the problem. We lost mitochondria. And so we're fermenting. What do you think we should do? And the child's going to say, try to get back to mitochondria. It's not a big deal, but we've been misdirected, and we've been misdirected with language, with linguistics, because we take this process of, um, of ongoing, uh, fermentation, which is an ongoing thing. And since it's a movement, it's called a verb. Movement, verbs are movement. And we take this movement, this verb, and we turn it into a noun, and we call it cancer. And so now we've given it a name, and we got to get enemies. We got weapons, and our weapons are pharmaceutical. So we've misdirected ourselves from the real uh, job at hand, the real what we really should be doing, and that is to restore balance, to restore what we need to function optimally, because we know the body will function optimally if it has everything it needs, and it doesn't have stuff that it doesn't need. So it's really simple, but we get off of that core, direction, and we start going after the weaponry, and we're going to fight it, and it's just not going to work, because that's not the problem, right? You have a poison apple tree. Everybody eats the apple, perishes, and so as a result, you call the tree doctor, and they come in and they cut off all the apples. You didn't solve the problem, because next fall you're going to have a harvest. So it wasn't the apples, right? There's no particular apple, and that's why when we think of surgeries, we should do surgeries because we know that it's just cutting it out. It's not going to solve the problem, right? So what is that? Anyway, what is that dark thing? Hmm. Um, is not going to solve the problem, right? So But in addition to not solving the problem, and biopsy is a form of surgery, you're piercing it. Bio In addition to not solving the problem, you now cause trauma, and trauma needs to be healed. And so now a lot of the body's resources are diverted from trying to eliminate CFCs and restore balance to healing. So we've kind of even more misdirected our thing. Plus, when you get the surgery, you're going to have to get general anesthesia, which are poisons, toxins. And so now your liver is going to be have a quite a job over the next 6 to 8 weeks to try to restore 12 weeks to try to detoxify. So it's yeah. So anyway, so the point is, when the cells first start to ferment, there are several little groups of them, and one group kind of becomes the alpha male, the strong one, and and so in order to grow, it has to have new blood vessels, angiogenesis, and it does. But it sends out signals to all the other cells that block them from being able to grow new blood vessels. So they can't engage in angiogenesis. All right. And so now it takes about 8 years for that little one cell to become a 1 gram, large enough that you can find it, and you identify it. It takes at least 8 years. And during that time, all those other little islands have gone through the lymphatics, through the blood vessels, and they've kind of settled all over and around. They're there. All right. And so now when you do the biopsy and or surgery and you disrupt it, that inhibition that it was sending out to those other ones is gone, and now they'll start to grow. It's just the way it is. And I don't make it up. This is where, how can I think of making such a thing up? I wouldn't even, yeah, I have a great imagination, but I wouldn't think of such a thing. I wouldn't even, anyway. So that's just the way it is. So that's why we do the surgery. When there's a life-threatening situation, it's about to block your ability to breathe or to have bowel movements or to eat or to, or it's excruciatingly painful, or, there are certain situations where we've got to do something. Otherwise, it makes no sense, and it'll make things more complicated. Right? So that's very, very, very simple to understand. All right. And so I'm glad that, when you don't get biopsies. And when you get a biopsy, it's not going to help anyway, because they give you what's going to happen. They're going to send it to the pathologist, who's going to look under the microscope and tell you what he sees, she sees, and what they see is the microscopic anatomy. Oh, it's in a duct, and it went through the wall. So invasive ductal, what is it? It's carcinoma. Why? Because it doesn't give you any information. It just kind of said, for example, chronic fatigue. Someone says, I've got chronic fatigue syndrome. Well, what does chronic fatigue mean? It means I'm always tired. That's a diagnosis. Doesn't tell me why I'm tired, how to fix it. So what good is it? So I want you to understand something about diagnosis. They don't help. Now it's claimed that by having the name, the diagnosis, we now know what treatments, but that's not true either, because they still don't work. Whatever the treatments are going to do still doesn't work. So they spend a lot of time and money and your hope sitting there going through all these diagnostic tests, and you think, oh my God, these guys are smart. They're going to figure this out and help me. And in the end, they come up with a name, and the name doesn't tell you how you got it or how to get rid of it. So you could have called it a banana. You didn't have to. The name is not going to help you. And if you think, well, yeah, but this particular type requires this particular drug, it's not true, because if you look at all the chemotherapeutic regimens that are in the manual that the oncologists look at, they're all interchangeable. They're pretty much the same. There's a few that are unique, but you can try the other ones, because remember what we're talking about. If you can get a poison into the cell and stay there, it's going to make the cell not be able to be there anymore. And the whole thing is, how can you get it in quicker than it can be pushed out? And that's the whole goal. So that's why we use insulin potentiated therapy, because insulin opens a doorway to allow what we want to get in there. And it's a doorway that the CFC cannot close, because if it closes that doorway, it can't survive. So it's a nice modality of administration. So if someone says, is IPT FDA approved? No, because the FDA does not approve modalities. It's Food and Drug Administration. They approve drugs or food. That's what they approve. They don't approve the modality of administration. So is the IPT FDA approved? Yes, indeed, because the drugs that they're using are FDA approved. These are standard chemotherapy drugs. But the modality, and in fact, there's been an emergence in the last, what, 10, 15 years, 20 years now, of what they call metronomic chemotherapy, which is basically just low dose chemotherapy in more infrequent administrations. And they're just not using the insulin. But now that's become part of oncology, so it's standard. Anyway, so that's that. Okay, so now let's look at John. This is John. John, and the topic is fasting. Can fasting repair nerve damage? Yes. Can fasting repair nerve damage? Yes. Now, and the caveat there is that you have to have enough. Yeah. Okay. So, depending on the extent of the damage, the type of damage, how long it's been there, et cetera, et cetera. Is there complete scar tissue and there's no longer any, you know, so it really depends. So that we can't just answer that in general. But what happens in fasting is when you get beyond, remember there, and if you read the book, the book that I just published, called Therapeutic Fasting, a clinical manual for metabolic reset and renewal, I think. It's on Amazon. And you can get Kindle or buy a book. Buy the hardcover, because the hardcover is beautiful. It's very nicely laid out. But uh, you'll see in there we go through the different phases, and not everyone is not the same, but in general, by day 10 or 11, you've cleaned up a lot, you've changed metabolically. It's been incredible boost to your health, incredible. But now, and that day is when, around that time, is when the body stops using its own internal resources so much, like the fat and the muscle, and starts looking for non-essential tissue, like tumors, like plaques in the arteries, like cysts, and then ultimately parasites, and then a revision of scar to undoes scar tissue, like that. Now, the reason I say unequivocally that yes, with nerve repair, is because a friend of mine was a quadriplegic. He had a unfortunate fall while building a greenhouse. He had a quadriplegic, and had done a 41-day water fast and was able to walk. I mean, he didn't have fine motor, but he moved kind of like Frankenstein, but he was able to function again. He could make himself salads, and he could catheterize himself. And, it's phenomenal. And I'm sure that every hospital in the world would say that didn't happen. This guy's crazy. He's making it up. But why would I make up such a thing? Can you imagine? Why would I do that? What value would that be for me to do that? Anyway, so yeah, the answer is yes, but you got to do it long enough. You got to prepare for it. Now remember, if someone's going to fast, you don't just jump into it, depending, because you're all coming from different lifestyle situations and different conditions of bodily function, right? So if you are, if you're eating a really highly caloric, uh, cooked fast food diet, and you're eating multiple times a day, to go straight into a water fast, it's going to be really difficult. You're going to be really not feeling well, because you've got that transition from external fuel to internal is going to be very difficult. So you prepare for it, first of all. And in the book, I lay it all out, if you're on medications, what we have to do and all that. But if you finally qualify and you've done all that, and you clean out, and so you prepare for it by changing your diet up till, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it requires, so that when you start the fast, it's not such a metabolic uh, change, right? So if you're eating a healthy diet, and then by the last 5, 6 days, you're eating nothing but really delicious, fantastic salads, right? With everything from avocados to cucumbers to, everything, pine nuts, even if you're steaming broccoli and cauliflower or whatever, but you can use a dehydrator and not kill the enzymes in there, not eliminate the enzymes. Okay. So, But anyway, so you can do that and put them in. But you have a really wonderful salad. You're doing all that. All right. So and you've done that for several days, and you already had changed your diet for a week or two before that. Now, when you go into the fast, it won't be this incredible metabolic change. It'll kind of be easier. The first 3 days are always the most difficult too because of that switch, and because of that, the change. But once you'll get to day 3, 4, or 5, whatever it is, and then you're gonna say, "Oh, no, I'm not hungry. I feel good." And you're gonna get you have energy and all that. But so then you've got to go. So for the nerve damage, you need to get up to an extended fast. We're talking beyond 21 days. Yeah, and then you might not for whatever reason you cannot do a full long 41-day fast. So you don't, and then you break it. You break it properly with the refeeding program that I put in the book, and then in addition to that, you eat a good healthy diet for, let's say, 4, 6, 8 weeks. Then you do another fast. Anyway, you can get this done. You can get this done. The answer is yes. Jennifer, hepatitis C and CFCs. Recurrence of endometrial CFCs 3 years after total hysterectomy, vaginal tumor spread to include urethra, bladder, rectum, and lymph nodes. I also have hepatitis C. My GYN oncologist wants to start chemo and immunotherapy. I will not. I'm taking ivermectin and bendazole currently, 25 and 250. Okay, that's what was in the study. Should I pursue getting and taking the standard medication for the hep C? Actually, that's of all, I normally don't push or recommend or agree with medications, but this medication that they came out with a, about how long ago? 10 years ago, whatever. Um, and you take one pill a day. Uh, I don't know what's going on with that, but actually it seems to resolve it. So I don't know what that is. So I'd say if you can, yeah, yeah, I would say yeah, yes. Um, and I don't know if that's standard because standard in Hep C used to be something horrible, like I think it was high dose interferon, which was making people. So it was so horrible. They said rather die than God. I can't use those words. I'm sorry. I'd rather perish than not have to then take that medication again because it was so devastating. So yeah, yeah. So, but other, but this new one was there's no effect. You just take one pill a day. It's crazy. I don't know what it is, but it seems to work very very well. But the other thing is you've had the hysterectomy, total hysterectomy. I'm assuming you had your ovaries out too, and then the tumor spread vaginally to include the urethra, bladder, and rectum. So so it's all over there and lymph nodes. So pretty much it's gone. It's spreading contiguously instead of through lymph nodes and through blood vessels. It's just spreading out that way contiguously. And down in that part of the body and that part of the pelvis, you've got all those things are close together. The vagina, the bladder, and the rectum. They're like a couple millimeters apart. So you know so that's what's going on. So it's active. So you need to do, and what we all need to do, and what anyone who's got CFCs or not even CFCs, you have any kind of condition, the first thing you do is get rid of any toxins in your body. Because the toxins are going to interfere with the whole healing process, and they're also that which is initiating the condition, whatever the condition is, and if it's CFCs. So we know that CFCs are loss of mitochondria, and how does that happen? Because there is a confluence let me get my foot up here. Okay, there's a confluence or of toxins around the cell, right? And so what you've got to do is eliminate every possible toxin. So I'm hoping that you, Jennifer, have uh, understand the significance of a biological dentist. You go to a biological dentist who's the real deal. They're certified by the IAOMT, and uh, and then they know, and they do the 3D cone beam CT, and they analyze everything, and so and then they use biocompatible materials. They don't use metals. They eliminate anything that's not viable in the mouth, like a root canal is a non-viable tooth. It's kind of like taxidermy, and yeah, but they eliminate properly with ozone, and they use platelet-rich fibrin to seal it off. But there's specific ways of doing this, yeah, and removing metals and stuff. They do it very. They have to get certified on how to do that. But you do all that, get all that, make sure that's because those have direct effect and can actually be the fundamental cause of the CFCs, because they have what they've done is they've blocked the energy flow to that particular area, and so the all the energy required for healing and restoration is not available, and things problems occur. So yes, you do you do the biological dentistry, and then you also take care of you clean out the aquarium. You just flood yourself with a good healthy green fresh green juices with some fruit in it for flavor make it delicious. Got to be delicious. You're doing that and you're cleaning, so you're just drinking and peeing and drinking and peeing and drinking and peeing, and you do this for 6 weeks, long time. Remember, you're not gonna be what you think is hungry after 3 4 days. You're going to be fine, right? You're going to have lots of energy and clarity. You're going to be getting a lot of nutrition because you're getting more in one day and from these 3 4 liters of juice than the average person gets in 9 months a year. I mean, because you're getting it's amazing. You're just not getting fat and fiber, but that's the way you clean out. And so you just by doing that, you're going to see things start to shrink away. Just by doing that, because now you've been able to stop the process, right, by eliminating the toxins that are initiating it, and then you're not feeding the whole process. So you're doing that. You're doing colon hydrotherapy. You're going to sleep early. You're moving around all day. There's a whole program. And so what you need to do is, Jennifer, I just really recommend that you go to drlodi.com, drlodi.com, join the CFC group. All right. And join the CFC group. We'll meet twice a week. We'll give you a plan to get going and how to do this methodically, systematically. And then you have a lot of support. You'll be on our Telegram group where we're all sharing information. And it's just, it's really something, it's a majorly practical and loving support. So drlodi.com, join the CFC group, I'm sorry, yeah, Jennifer. This is Cassie. Question: chlorine dioxide. What are your thoughts on chlorine dioxide? Its use as general health recovery, parasite elimination. I'm reading The War on Chlorine Dioxide and the Jim Humble book. Black seed oil, absolutely excellent. And with regards to parasites, indirectly, it's not going to directly do it, but indirectly, but black seed oil is excellent. Black cumin seed oil, and it's very good, but not specifically going to address parasites, but improve health and your cellular metabolism and immune system. So yes, so that'll help the parasites go away, but you still need to do other things. Now, chlorine dioxide, yeah, the war on it, it works. It's a very simple molecule. It follows biology. When our white blood cells come upon, a bacteria or whatever it doesn't want to be there, it produces hydrogen peroxide. That's like the normal standard process, and the hydrogen peroxide oxidizes the organism, and it no longer is there. But when that's not working, our cells produce something called hypochlorous, and so it's chloride again. So it's very, yeah. So it works. Why is the air conditioning still on? Anyway, um, so yeah, no, absolutely, Cassie. Okay. All right, so now we have some, excuse me, Instagram questions. And this is from Aneke, and she says, what is the best diet for ovarian CFC stage 4? Again, what I just said, I hope you were listening just now. What I just said is first you got to do all the cleansing and biological dentistry and all that sort of thing. And then the diet would be eating uncooked plant food. which is what nature, God presents to us, right? God didn't give us tomato sauce, gave us tomatoes, all right? So got to trust in God. It's pretty clever. Um, but so then you do a diet and you eat that diet within 4 to 6 hour window. You stop eating 5 hours before sleep. Once you learn how to make these delicious foods, you'll raw uncooked foods. I don't like to use the word raw because it sounds, you say raw food, the word raw sounds painful. Oh, it's raw. I'm raw. I don't like that word. And it's actually just real food because it hasn't been manipulated by humans. Um, and and by the way, we have a recipe book for raw, and it's called, and I have to use the word, but the name of it is called "Stop Making Cancer." And uh, so anyway, but in that book are many recipes, fun, delicious recipes, lasagna, stuff like that, um, tacos. I mean, of course, it's anyway. Uh, yeah. So that diet would do it. Okay, next one is magical magically fatig magically calife Carla. I'm not sure. So fasting, perimenopause, HRT, insulin resistant, uncontrollable appetite with progesterone. All right. All right. Fasting, perimenopausal, HRT. Okay. So hopefully the HRT, human hormone replacement therapy, is not from retail pharmacies, but rather from a compounding pharmacy that's using bioidentical plant sources. It's sourced from plants, and they prepare it in a way so that it's bioidentical, meaning it's exactly the same molecule that your body would produce. So it's not considered foreign. It is organic. It's not a synthetic. It's made from living tissue, and excuse me. What a lot. Unfortunately, what a lot of practitioners don't realize is that a healthy woman is a cycling woman. A woman who's having a menstrual cycle, right? So, and in the menstrual cycle, we know that estrogen goes up the first 2 weeks and down, and then we know the progesterone goes up in like uh, the last 2 weeks. And so when we look at the first part and the second part of the entire month cycle, the first part is dominated with estrogen, the other one's dominated by progesterone, and they balance each other out. And they're both necessary, and that's health. And so when you do hormone replacement therapy, you don't want to be taking something every day, because that's not nature. Nature is cycles, right? So you will cycle. So we have a particular regimen that I think works. It's the simplest one. You get the estrogen, whatever it is, if it's estriol only. If you've had any kind of estrogen receptor positive anything, you would not use the biest. Biest is the estradiol and estriol. Estradiol is the one that stimulates growth. Estriol blocks it. So I would use just estriol the days 1 through 26, and then the days 12 through 26, you'll use progesterone. And then the last 4 days, you do the estrogen, and then you start all over again. And that way you're cycling. And if you still have a uterus, you might have some spotting, but you're not going to have a full-on menstrual cycle because it's not, yeah, it's just not going to happen. But by remaining cycling, your body has been doing this for 30, 40 years, however long you've been in, when you first got your period. And so your body will function because that's how it learned to function. So yeah, you can do that. And insulin resistant, uncontrollable appetite, and progesterone. So what you do with the fasting depending on, so if you, like I was going to say, if you're if you have an uncontrollable appetite, so maybe you're eating a lot and frequently and all that, instead of jumping into a fast, which will be really tumultuous, you might consider just doing a juice cleanse for 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever, to get you metabolically straight, to do a lot of healing. It's amazing what happens in that. And then you can then go into a fast. You might want to eat for maybe a while, to, just um, and then and then go into the fast. And if you go into the fast correctly, so get the book, go to Amazon, get the book, Therapeutic Fasting, a manual for uh, metabolic reset and renewal. All right, and step by step, and then you can go through it. Uh, but yeah. So progesterone makes you hungry. So I don't know how you're taking it and all that, and I hope you're getting a biologically identical testosterone, progesterone. Hey everybody on Instagram, yay! Cool. All right, now the next one here is Solicita. What is the cause of high iron level? Thank you. All right. Uh, okay, iron is a very highly metabolized, scrutinized, carefully dealt with in the body. All right. Iron, which is absolutely essential to life, is also can be detrimental in many ways because of its nature. Right. It can stimulate the production of free radicals, which cause damage. And so when you're looking at iron, I would have to get really more information. That's why joining the groups. If you join a group, we can talk weekly, and I can ask you questions. So, for example, iron's high. How high is it? What is the ferritin? What's going on? Um, what is the ratio of ferritin to iron? What is your diet? Um, you know, uh, we've got to look at other minerals like copper. Copper is very much involved in iron metabolism. So there's a lot of things to look at. So I would really need to have more information. So please join the group so we can interact. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Um, all right. So there we are. And let's move on now. We're in the second hour. We're going to move on to. I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody on Instagram. Just real question. Here's Joni. If biopsy spreads CFCs, what is the best alternative? Okay, well, the best alternative is realize what you're going to get from a biopsy only is a description of the microscopic anatomy. It's called histology, and it's not going to tell you anything anyway. It doesn't help. It just gives you a name, and the name doesn't help. Um, oh, that monster coming after me is a three-headed gargoyle that likes to eat humans. Now I got the name for it. Am I okay? No. Just naming things doesn't help. Anyway, so you don't need to name it. What you need to do, the alternative is to restore your healthy physiology and balance, and then that won't be there because whatever is there in your body is there because it's a part of an adaptive process to a situation it's not meeting its biological requirements and psychological requirements when it comes to humans. We're not just biological entities. We have a mind, and the mind. You got to mind the mind or don't mind the mind. Anyway, um, so that's the thing is not. It's good because you really don't want a name. Don't name it because now that's gonna be stuck for the rest of your life. The name and whatever that name means. Oh, anyway, so the alternative is not to get the biopsy, not to get it named. If you want to know if there's CFCs going on, a PET scan will do that, and you can take precautions before the PET scan and during the PET scan of taking supplements like high doses of good quality mixed tocopherols and tocotrienols, which is a vitamin E, mixed carotenoids, which is a vitamin A, for several days, making sure you're taking 2 grams of liposomal sodium ascorbate 4 times a day, and prepare for it. And then all that stuff. And then on the day you're going to get the PET CT like an hour before, take like 240 milligrams of melatonin, and that kind of protects. Yeah. Anyways, and so you can get through the minimal problems with it, but you'll get information. Or you can just say, okay, look, whatever it is, I'm going to do the same thing, and that is live a healthy life. So yeah. Anyway, so let's move on to spontaneous questions. Where are we? Wait, I gotta figure out why the air conditioner won't go off. Excuse me. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, it's off. I'm not freezing anymore. God. Because it's warm outside. It's always warm. Um, okay. Um, well, what was the question? They moved. They moved. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna start here because this is Revesia. And yes or no answer. Got to go. Is black seed oil any good for parasites? Oh, I answered that. Yeah, it's good for your health, your immune system, which is going to be helpful to eliminate parasites. But you need to do a lot of other things, not just that. Again, with all situations of ill health, remember we don't want. It's not just a military operation, right? It's not just that you know we're going to attack this thing. That's not the goal of it, right? The goal is not to attack. It's not just a military operation, because what we're at, whatever we've decided to go after is a manifestation of a systemic situation. So we've got to deal with the systems for the system, right? And then you can still go after the uh whatever's there to try and eliminate it, but you do it in a way that's not toxic. That's not going to cause any problems, because um a lot of times the the methodology that we're using to eliminate it can be toxic, right? So okay, please keep that in mind. Now, um, this is from Bethany. How can we access all the parasite medications? Hard to find a PC to prescribe. Yeah, it's very hard to get a doctor, a regular doctor, to prescribe the medications in the. Well, first of all, most doctors, for some reason, even though they took parasitology in medical school. Yes, okay, I mean, who's it said that we don't take that we don't study parasites? Um, oh, that's right. The esteemed the esteemed Dr. Brian said that we don't take parasitology. We do take parasitology. Um, but so my question is, okay, so we took parasitology. So why do most doctors think that there is are no that they unfortunately don't have parasites? Anyway, and they're not gonna find it by the regular tests and all that sort of thing. So you're not gonna, and even if they agreed to do it and they wrote the prescription in the amounts that you need to take for the duration, a pharmacy won't fill it normally, because the pharmacy is gonna say, "Oh, no, this is not standard." And so, yeah, you've got to, find other ways of getting it. If you contact my assistant at hello@drlodi.com, it's an email, hello@drlodi.com, drlodi.com. She'll be able to help you get them. All of them. Um, okay, this is from Linda. Says fasting on and off 30 plus days. Current GKI is 0.86. Great, fantastic. Now, on and off for 30 plus days, Linda. I'm not sure what you mean when you're not, because you want to be really careful of when you're actually doing the fat, just the water, and for how long you're doing it, and making sure you're monitoring, your volume status, and you're doing all the things that you need to do to make this a healthy, happy, successful fast. And then if you're on and off, so how frequently and all that sort of thing, because our goal is not just a GKI. The GKI is the glucose to ketone index, or ratio, and so normally in a person who's not fat, who's just eating normal, their GKI is going to be like 9 or 10. meaning that GKI. So the glucose is much higher than the ketones. So when you get it down to 3, that means the glucose is only 3 times higher than the ketones. When you get it down to 1, so if your GKI is 1, that means they're equal. And if you get it like this, 0.86, that means there's more ketones than glucose. That's an extremely therapeutic range, and that's really helpful for many things, including CFCs. But it's not. But that's not the only thing that happens during fasting that's so important. So on and off, if to really for CFCs, depending on what your goal, what your situation is, and what your goal is, but um, you know, you don't want to go on and off. You want to go on. You want to continue the fast for a period of time, long enough. Remember, it's after day 10 or 11 is when you start to actually eliminate non-essential tissues, which are, tumors, plaques, cysts, blah, blah, blah. You start to eliminate them. So, so a 21-day water fast would give you about 10, 11 days of doing that. A 30-day would give you even longer. So the longer you can do that, the more you're able to not only get rid of, clean up everything, clean up all the, uh, you know, all the cells that were kind of sluggish and old, they will have been replaced or repaired, and the toxins will be gone, and now the going after the non-essential tissue. So it's a full-on process like that, and you want to be monitoring it correctly. And the longer you do it, the more more benefits you'll get out of it. However, you've got to make sure, and I've got in the book, it's called again, therapeutic fasting manual for metabolic renewal, reset and renewal. Um, um, in there are ways of continually monitoring yourself and to know, yes, and there it is on the you um, you want to know when it's time to break it, because there are times that it needs to break the fast, right? And you break the fast for various reasons. So if you, various reasons. Um, one is you're done. You've done it. Your tongue is pink again, and you've finally got a sense of real hunger, not appetite. Um, and you've done it sufficiently long. Um, or you're checking your glucose and your ketone finger sticks, and now you see your ketones have been high, glucose has been low, and now your ketones start to drop. So now you're running out of fat, and it's time to stop, because when you run out of fat, when you run out of the fat tissue to sustain it, then the body, in order to survive, will start to consume itself, and that's what we call starvation. So starvation is when you've used up all your internal stores and the body starts to consume itself. That's not what you want to do. So you need to know to break it before then. Or if you're having a problem because had some other conditions when you started, like you're vomiting, it's not, you're not stopping, or you're dizzy, and all that means it's not being conducted correctly, which is why I wrote this book, so we could give people the knowledge and the confidence to do this, because it can be done. It's been done throughout history. It was done before Sumer. The land of Sumer predates Egypt like 2,000 years. So it's, ancient. It's kind of where we think civilization began. And there are some, even there were some you know groups of people, colonies, small cities, even before Sumer. And even in those days, they were fasting. So fasting is as old as long as we've been eating, we've been fasting, right? And we know that all the great saints, and Moses and Jesus, and you did prolonged fasting, and it's part of initiations into. So it's really and again, remember, the human being is a mind, body, spirit complex, right? And so all of those different aspects of our being need to be brought into harmony, and that's what fasting does, because it's a psychological and spiritual as well as physical process, and it's a very, very essential. If it's like getting a second start, a new body. So all right, so here's Renee. She says, I had a hysterectomy. What can I do about my lymphatic system? So it sounds like your hysterectomy. So a lot of people say hysterectomy, hyster, Hyster, hyster refers to uterus. Ectomy, it means taking it out. Ect, outside to so hysterectomy. But normally, in the medical nomenclature would be bilateral oophorectomy and hysterectomy. Um, so the oo for is ovaries, bilateral both. So both ovaries and uterus were taken out. So normally that's what people are referring to, because just to simply go in and get the hysterectomy, just the uterus, that's done in situations where someone has fibroids, or maybe endometriosis, um, or there's bleeding from the uterus or whatever it is, and they just go in and take the uterus out and they leave the ovaries. But normally it's called a TAHBSO, total abdominal hysterectomy, and bilateral salpingo oophorectomy. Salpingo refers to the fallopian tubes. Oophorectomy, is ovaries, and then ectomy, take out. Total abdominal hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo oophorectomy. Sounds like a really smart person to say it. No, it's just telling you what it is. But so it sounds like that's what they did. And when you're asking about lymph nodes, and probably they, in that surgery, they took out lymph nodes, which drives me crazy. Unless, I mean, a lymph node is completely obliterated, and it's got CFCs in it. That I can see. But other than that, the lymph nodes are where the intelligence of the immune system is. That's where the decisions are made by the immune cells that are in there. What are in there? There's the naive T cells. There's the dendritic cells. There's the macrophages. There's the B cells. So they're all in there, and they have a conference, because they're getting all this information coming in from the lymph vessel that's draining the tissue, and they're going, yeah, this is good. This is like, we keep it going. This here we need to, this and here we need to develop an immune response, and they develop an immune response. They send out signals to the whole body, and you develop a systemic wide immune response. So if you take out those lymph nodes, then you lose that ability. So it sounds like they might have taken them out, and I've read surgical reports uh, where they took out like 44, 48 lymph nodes, and I think, wow, and 3 were positive. Yeah, okay, whoa. But anyway, if a lymph node is positive, meaning it has CFCs in it, okay, well, that's what it's supposed to do. They're supposed to go there and get evaluated so you can develop an immune response to them. It's different if it's if it's completely obliterated, the lymph node. That's a whole different story, right? Okay, so but in most cases it's not. So what do you do? So you've got, if you've had a lot of lymph nodes taken out, then your lymphatic uh, system has, the anatomy of your lymphatic system has been changed. You just need to continually augment it. What I absolutely recommend that you can do at home: get a rebounder. This is basically a little trampoline. It comes with instructions on how to do it. Rebound a couple times a day. Exercise, moving around, doing your normal moving around. Bicycling, and jumping rope, and walking, and stand on your head if you can. It's very good to reverse flow. Get a um, they have they have these tables that have, at either hand you have a wheel you can turn. So it's a table that you get on it like this. It claps. It goes around your ankles, and then you're holding here. And the table is called an incline. Yeah. I mean, you go up to here horizontal, and then if you're just a little bit where you're like 15 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees with your lower part of your body up, you're going to have reverse flow, and that's going to be very good. So that's very good for everybody, for everything, because remember, as we age, what happens is over time, blood starts to accumulate in the lower parts of our organs, over time, and our organs start to look like a bell. They're bell shaped, and then which means it's going to impair good healthy functioning. So by doing these declines, right, your feet. And by the way, if you don't have an incline table, just get like some plywood, and put a nice blanket on it, foam, whatever, and put it up to your couch. So the feet are at your couch, and you're here, and you just lie on that with a pillow. So you don't have to go and buy something. You can make something. Um, And, just do that a couple times a day, 50, for 15, 30 minutes, and that'll help keep your organs from becoming congested and coagulated with age. So those are ways. Belly laughing, because when your diaphragm goes up and down, it kind of pushes the lymphatic. There's a big vessel in our abdomen, chest, which is a collection from all the lymphatics from the lower parts of the body and the whole left side of the body, and it's called the cisterna chyli. And then when the diaphragm goes up and down, it pumps it, and it gets empty. So that's another good thing. So a good belly laugh, diaphragmatic breathing, all those things are extremely amazingly helpful. Um, and then also, if you had this kind of surgery and stuff, I would advise finding a certified lymphatic therapist, right? And so and there are different degrees of there's the basic certification, and then there's the advanced certification. The advanced certified lymphatic therapists, they're the ones that do the wrapping and stuff when people have had a lot of lymph nodes removed. But in addition to that, make sure they were trained in ELT, electrolymphatic therapy, because they have these glass wands that are able to move deeper tissues. Because remember, a manual lymphatic massage is going to just get the lymphatics in your dermis, in your skin. But we have a lot of deep lymphatics, and which you're talking about. So a lymphatic massage is not necessarily going to help them. It's going to increase systemic lymph flow, but it's not the same. So you get a certified lymphatic therapist who can really help move and direct it. And the reason that you want a certified lymphatic therapist with advanced certification is because they have studied the different surgeries, like the Whipple, breast, colon resections, and they know the lymph nodes that are down there that have been taken out. But just by going to a regular doctor, they won't know that, so they won't know what direction you need to direct the lymphatic flow. So that's why you need a certified lymphatic therapist. So that's what I would recommend. And I would also recommend getting really healthy. Okay, so this is Christina. Do you know what is the healthiest to do for good oral health, and what about deep cleaning? All right, so yeah, oral health, very, very important. I'm glad you're asking this, Christina. Um, so when we so oral health, so our oral cavity, it's got a lot of structures in it, right? So we're usually talking about the teeth, but we have teeth, we have tongue, we have soft tissue like a pharynx, um, and we've got our gums, and they're all connected really closely to the sinuses. In fact, a lot of the roots from these teeth are like almost at the sinus, so they definitely affect them. Uh, so the tongue placement and all that, and then considering too that when we're born and our heads squeeze through a cervix, we have these 7 bones in our head that are not yet fused. So that's why a lot of times, uh, people jokingly say that they gave birth to a cone head, right? Because but that'll settle down. But even if you didn't have, it's like you're the third or fourth baby, it's not going to be a hard squeeze through that cervix like it is for the first one. So you might not have any kind of obvious uh, morphological changes, changes in shape. You won't have a cone head, but still, those bones still need to finally fuse. And so you've had even someone who was taken out with cesarean who didn't squeeze through that, still those bones have to fuse, and if they don't fuse directly, they don't fuse correctly, like in alignment, then that means their jaw, their TMJ, temporal mandibular joint, uh, will be off a little bit. Now that also, remember, our bite sits at the top of our spinal column, and it pretty much, so if our bite's off, our whole spinal column, which is your autonomic nervous system and your peripheral nervous system, so it's got a profound effect. So you want to have your bite right. So they do. Even in the field of DOs, which are osteopaths, they have a specialty called osteopathy, um, or there's cranial sacral workers. So they help you with that. So anyway, oral health. We're talking about oral health is really talking about the health of the head. But in terms of the teeth, remember, there's part of the teeth that are come outside of the gum line, and then there's inside, and they both basically have different sets of bacteria that like to hang out there. So someone who's got cavities, meaning they've got, caries or like, holes in their tooth, that's because they've got microorganisms that ferment sugars and they produce lactic acid, which wears away the enamel and they get in there and it makes a hole. That's very different than the ones that are underneath the gums, and that's periodontal. So peri means around, odontal around uh, the root, and the periodontal conditions can result in teeth loss. So they're very different. Um, but both of those. So what do? We get oil. We get some extra virgin organic coconut oil. You get up in the morning. The first thing to do is maybe just get some water, rinse your mouth, and spit it out. You put a little salt in it. If you have a water pick, do that. Then squeeze some oil in your mouth, the coconut oil, and switch it around. Not crazily, but you can even sit there for a minute, but switching around because the oil will kind of seep up underneath, and it can get it can get up into the periodontal areas, right? And then so you do this for 20 minutes. So what do? You go make your tea or coffee, or may take a shower while you're doing it, and just do this. And when you're done, spit it into the trash. Don't spit it into your sink because it'll eventually cause it to be clogged up, or even the toilet. Just into the trash, spit it out, then rinse it out nicely. Then you can um, uh, brush your teeth. You can also get 3% food grade hydrogen peroxide, and you can do that like maybe before you do the oil pull or after, and do that a couple twice a day. Um, and that's good oral health. And then whenever you've eaten, rinse, get it out, floss it, just get out that debris. And remember, the organisms that will like colonize and eat different parts of your body are there because of your diet. So we know that. We know that as dietary changes have occurred on a mass scale, humanity wide, uh, over the last 10,000 years, there's been a difference in the oral flora, the oral microbiome. So it really depends on diet. So remember, whatever you eat is what the organisms in you are eating. That's what they're eating. So your oral microbiome, your GI microbiome, gastrointestinal microbiome, are whatever relative proportion of microorganisms are there, which would determine whether you have a dysbiosis or are there because they're eating, right? Any organism is where it is because it's eating. So by you changing your diet, you'll change the organisms that are in there, their relative proportions. Very, very important. So, and the deep cleaning, you don't necessarily need it if you're doing all of this stuff. However, you may need it. Now, you want to get it with a practitioner who's not going to use any fluoride, right? So you've got to go to a biological dentist. You could do that to get a deep cleaning, and then for maintenance, do what I was suggesting with the oils and everything. All right. Now here's Rosie. She's saying, "Hi, what can I take in place of Synthroid for Hashimoto's?" Okay, Rosie. Synthroid is T4. So the thyroid hormone makes T3 and T4, and the 3 and the 4 refer to, excuse me, the number of iodines. Now, iodine is an element, and like all element, it has a location on the periodic table of elements, if you've ever seen that. And the vertical rows in on the periodic table are elements, atoms that have the same reactivity because they all have the same number of electrons on their outer shell. Blah, 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 blah. But anyway, so the group of fluoride, chloride, bromide, and iodide, those are called halogens. They all have the same reactivity because they'll react with the earth metals and the transition metals to form salts. Sodium chloride salt, magnesium chloride, uh, uh, silver chloride, or sodium bromide or sodium iodide. So they'll um, have the same chemical reactivity. So when your thyroid gland is going to make the thyroid hormone, if it can't find an iodine because we don't eat a ton of seaweed the way Japanese people do, um, and we're getting inadequate amounts if we follow the RDA. Uh, uh, so it can't find an iodine, it's going to grab a bromide or a chloride or a fluoride, whatever's around. And we have lots of fluoride, we have lots of bromide from baked goods, and we've got chloride in our water. So that's easy to find. So you get the results of your T4, T3, and you don't know what the 4 and 3 are. Are they two bromides and a chloride and one iodine, or what? You don't know that. And therefore you can't really rely on that test. So for that reason, we do basal body temperatures, because temperature is a way of evaluating um, energy, and thyroids are there to uh, modulate the amount of energy the body is making. So, so taking your temperature, so you take your temperature with your armpit in the morning before you get out of bed, and you do that 5 days in a row, and then you take the average. That means you add up all five and you divide by five. And then if you're using Fahrenheit, if it's less than 97.8, and if you're using Celsius, if it's less than 36.6, then you are hypothyroid, low functioning thyroid. And that's what Hashimoto's is. Now, Hashimoto's, again, is what they call Hashimoto's, is having a hypothyroid, not putting out enough thyroid hormone. And then there are antibodies, high levels of antibodies in your blood. And so they call this Hashimoto's. And their assumption, which is not correct, is that the antibodies are causing the low functioning, which is not the truth. They are the body trying to adapt and deal with the fact there's not enough iodine. So what do you do? Well, you got to keep taking the iodine. So you're going to get some Lugol's iodine tablets. You're going to take those daily. And while you're taking them, you'll be measuring your basal body temperatures. Excuse me. And you can go online and get something called Thyrovanz, Thyrovanz. And there's Westroid and there's Armor. There's different kinds of uh, what they call natural thyroids, which are basically glandulars. They're from like animals like cows and pigs, sheep, and but in those you get T4 and T3, whereas the synthroid that you're on is only T4. And the reason that's significant is because, remember, T3 is the one that is active. T4 is like a prohormone. It circulates, and when it's needed, one of the iodines taken off and it becomes a T3. So when you're getting synthroid, you're only getting T4. So this is, so if you can get T3 and T4. If you don't want to take any glandulars, then you would get you would continue on the synthetic synthroid for T4, but you would also take cytomel, which is going to be the T3, and you'd take it in the right proportions. Um, but yeah, those are the alternatives. But again, by replacing the iodine, so within a year and a half, when your body has now enough iodine, your thyroid gland will now be able to make adequate amounts of thyroid hormone, and you won't be hypothyroid anymore. You won't have to take any kinds of medications, and then you just keep monitoring your basal body temperature as long as that's okay, and taking the iodine. And then there'll become a point about a year and a half that you can start to reverse, you can wean off it. You can start to decrease the amount of Thyrovans, or whatever thyroid hormone you're taking. And at that point, you'll reduce the Lugol's iodine from 25 milligrams a day to 12.5 milligrams a day for maintenance. And you'll eventually wean off the thyroid medication, and you'll find that you're good. But it'll still take maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years before you see the antibodies come down. But they will come down because they're not the cause, they're part of the adaptive process. All right, all right. Now, oh my gosh. All right. Uh, okay, so here's Carrie Thacker. Questions for oh, wait, I'll get you a minute, Carrie. Let me just see if there are any, Instagram questions. And I don't know if there are any TikTok questions. How am I gonna know if there are TikTok questions? Would they would come up on, I guess on, Restream? I don't know. Uh, hey, excuse me. Here's a question on Instagram by Risk Risk Risker Linda. During water fasting, are we still allowed to take supplements such as D3? Yeah, no. During a juice cleanse, yes, because you're still eating and all that. But during a water fast, you really want to give your body the respect and give it the time and the respect and time to do what only it knows how to do, and that is to truly heal. So you don't want to take anything. Plus, it'll confound things, and it might, yeah. So no, during a water fast. The only thing now during a water fast, however, if there's a medication that that's necessary, like an antiarrhythmic for your heart, or and I've kind of outlined this in the book. In the book, it'll help you understand, what medications you need to wean off of and stuff like that. All right, so this is a message from. Oh, by the way, when we do YouTube, um, not YouTube, Zoom. When we do the Zoom things every week, uh, our meetings, you can. Excuse me. You can. There's a way in the Zoom to have it translate into whatever language. So if you're from, Bulgaria or China or whatever, you can get the subtitles right there. Um, what was that question again? So this is looks like it's um, a Romance language. It looks like please medications for aceta liquid carcinoma hepatometastas. So I'm not sure what I'm reading here. Aceta liquid carcinoma. So it sounds like ascites, which is a third spacing accumulation of fluid in the abdomen. And it was and apparently there was hepatic metastasis, which is liver. Um, so the foods to eat. Well, first of all, I hope you listen to everything and you're able to get all this. I'm sorry, but the English, but the cleansing and doing all that stuff, and then for the health is you know yeah. So that's a situation. Ascites can be a very troublesome situation. So ascites means, all of the blood vessels that drain our abdomen, from the colon up to the duodenum, the whole stomach and all that, they all coalesce into one large blood vessel called the a portal vein. And the portal vein goes right into the liver to be detoxified by the liver. So now, if the liver has, where the vein is entering, if there are a lot of lymph nodes there that's blocking it, the fluid will back up, or if there's a lot of scarring in the liver or lymph nodes that are surrounding it, there's multiple reasons for the blood to not be able to go through the liver, and so it's in the portal vein, and the portal vein gets larger, and the liquid portion of the blood kind of extravasates through the, the blood vessel wall and starts to collect. And that's what we call ascites. And it can happen in the chest. And it's what we call a pleural effusion because it's around the lungs. Um, and so that means things are being blocked. The other reason for ascites or a pleural effusion can be that the CFCs are producing a lot of extra substance. So and it's collecting there. So it can either be that the liquid is being anatomically blocked and it's going through the walls and it's being collected, or the CFCs are producing stuff like mucus and different things, um, and other CFCs. So there's that. So when you have ascites, um, and one of the things about ascites is when your abdomen is really big like that and it's kind of pressing up on your stomach, you're not that hungry. And the other thing that can happen, if it's pressing up on the diaphragm, you're going to be short of breath too. So in situations like that, you've got to have it drained. And at the hospital or the office of a gastroenterologist. So, because your question was diet, but I'm saying in addition to diet, make sure you're cleansing and you've done all the things we're talking about. And then the diet would be a healthy diet. The diet never changes. The diet's always uncooked plant food, which is nuts, seeds, fruit, leaves, stems, roots, all just, you know, and prepared in delicious ways and all that. But that's real food with energy and enzymes and nutrients. It's just got everything we need. And it doesn't have stuff we don't need if it's organic. If there's no, there hasn't been, there were no toxins used to produce it in the growing process. All right. So, um, where, anyway, so anyway, that's the diet. The diet's always the same. The diet's always the same because we're human and our dietary requirements never change. The only time that we really need to be concerned and kind of um, adjust our eating is if you've had a surgery like a Whipple procedure where they take the exit part of the stomach that goes into the small intestines and they bypass it around the whole duodenum and pancreas over to the jejunum, which is the second part of the small intestines. And when they do that, you've bypassed a certain part of the small intestines. And in this case, it's the duodenum, that's where food is digested. That's where food is processed. The pancreas has uh, its role, the bile from the liver, and so if in that case, dietary would be different. So you'd have to eat food that has already been like pre-digested because it's going to go into the jejunum. So it depends on so there are changes like that where it'd be different, but it's still going to be uncooked plant food, but you'll prepare it differently. You'll blend the blended soups and stuff. So yeah, excuse me. Boy, yawning. It's like I didn't sleep. I did. I slept a lot. I went to bed like 9 and woke up at 5:30. So hey, there's plenty of sleep. I don't know. I don't know. All right. Here. Hi, Dr. Lodi. Do you have any advice for Sjogren's syndrome? Thank you. All right. So Sjogren's syndrome is it's classified under autoimmune, And autoimmune, the assumption is that the body is uh, extremely stupid, and it's attacking itself. And so they have these different syndromes that they call them, and so that the body is attacking itself in a specific way. It's madness. So lupus, Sjogren's, and all that. And it's hard to distinguish because they all have different aspects. It's because there's no thing called Sjogren's. There's no thing called lupus. There's no thing called rheumatoid arthritis, which are all considered to be Hashimoto's, Graves, which are considered to be autoimmune diseases. Uh, but nevertheless, you've got some real stuff going on there. So, you need to do the same thing that we all need to do, and that's what we've been talking about this whole session, and that is get the cleansing, get the biological dentistry, do a long juice cleanse, and then you can even do water fasting, and that will help incredibly well. But you got to work your way up to it and all that. And you now you can even in this situation where you might have a lot of um, God, different kinds of proteins in your blood and stuff like that from the situation. You can do what's called a double filtration plasmapheresis, DFPP. We're finding these now in doctors' offices. It used to be if you wanted to get plasmapheresis, you had to do it in the hospital in a hospital setting. And a plasmapheresis is kind of like if you've ever seen people on getting dialysis, or you understand what dialysis is. In dialysis, they have both arms, and they basically take your blood because you get dialysis because your kidneys are no longer functional. So the blood comes out and it goes through this machine and is cleansed and it goes back in. And so that's that. But whereas plasmapheresis is it's just dealing with the plasma. But in the plasma, which is the liquid portion of the blood, but in the plasma are all sorts of proteins, and there's a lot of stuff that we don't want there, and spike proteins, blood clots, and then even immunosuppressive proteins, etc. Tons of excess antibodies that we don't need. Anyway, those are all cleaned out. So a DFPP, it's about a 2 to 3 hour session, but it cleans out your blood, and it's just especially helpful, like with multiple myeloma, because in multiple myeloma, people have an excess of what they call light chains, and they cause damage in the kidneys and eyes and all that sort of thing. And you can just clean them out, and then it gives you a chance to start doing you're changing your life and doing all the things to restore health. But in the meantime, you've cleaned out these guys. So anyway, so that's what I'd suggest. And then the other thing for your immune system. So with Sjogren's or any of these, what they call autoimmune, it's usually that the immune system can be what they call Th1 or Th2. It's kind of a polarity. So when it's oriented towards Th1, it's more oriented towards a healthy one, because it's gobbling up stuff that it doesn't want, and lots of stuff. But if it's oriented towards Th2, it's more permissive and other things. So we find that to be associated with autoimmune and parasites and stuff. Anyway, we want to restore that balance, and we restore it in many ways. Like vitamin C helps restore it. Yeah, there's lots of ways. But so what we want to do in immune situations is you can get a test called the lymphocyte subset test. You can get that from any lab, like LabCorp, Quest, or whatever country you're in. But there's one special one in the U.S. It's Cyrex Labs, Cyrex, and they do what's called a lymphocyte map, MAP, and they look in detail, at an extreme detail, at the different lymphocytes and what they're doing. So it's very instructive to see what's really going on. And then, of course, to restore immune competence, We got to look at your age, see if you're, how your thymus gland is functioning. Maybe you need to get the peptide thymosin alpha 1, which will allow your body to still make uh, more T cells because um, the thymus gland, which is in the chest here, is the most functional day two of life. And then in terms of volume, it's probably around the largest at around the age 12 or 13. And then there's a process called thymic involution where it gets the actual gland tissue called the parenchyma actually gets replaced by fat. And it's called thymic involution. So that when you reach the age of 40, you only have 30% left. And which means you have a much diminished ability to produce healthy T cells, which we need. And by 65, you're like making none, close to none. So there's an enzyme called thymosin alpha 1. I think the brand name was Zadaxin. And you give yourself these little injections with a insulin syringe to restore thymic function. Why does it do that? Because this amino acid, this peptide, 28 amino acid peptide that we call thymosin alpha 1, is normally produced by the thymus gland, and it's how the T cells are matured and made healthy, and natural killer cells are activated, all that stuff. So since you're getting older and you have less, uh, it's excuse me, you could almost look at it as a form of hormone replacement therapy, HRT, because because a hormone can be a peptide. For insulin's that peptide. So here we have a peptide that's not being made so much anymore. So we're gonna give it. So that's one thing you can do. The other one you got to do, you got to balance your thyroid, got to balance your adrenals, because your thyroid and your adrenals. And look it up. Look this stuff up. Whatever I say, look it up. If we had a Zoom, I could show you and share the research and show you, but we're not in that situation right now. But the thyroid and the adrenals are the managers of the immune system. They determine, what the immune system's doing. How many of these cells is it going to make? All that. So activate cells. We're talking about B cells, T cells, macrophages, natural killer cells. All of them, dendritic cells. So you've got to have those balanced. So you're getting the TA1, you're getting those balanced, and then melatonin is the other part of it, which is the pineal gland. We just don't make enough anymore because our pineal gland has been systematically rendered less and less functional with things like fluoride and EMF. So we're just not making enough melatonin. We got to remember melatonin is a very potent antioxidant, specific antioxidant for the hydroxyl free radical. And it also is a regulator of the immune system, much like the thyroid and the adrenals. So you got to be taking high doses of that throughout the day. And of course, eating right, going to sleep early, all that stuff, and you're going to restore the balance to your immune system. But it's very important, as I said, to get that lymphocyte map from Cyrex Labs. H2O, water. Amazing. The elixir of life, the universal solvent, the fountain of youth, water. Oh, sorry, you guys. I just realized it was 9 a.m. Over here, and wherever it is. Uh, oh, you got so many questions here, boy. You guys got to join the group so we can really get into all your questions, because I feel terrible ending this and not being able to answer your questions, because leaky gut, inflammation, melanoma. Yeah, I mean, a 41 to a 41 water fast helps everything. sarcoidosis, yeah, all that stuff. Can you still fast with heart medications? That's it depends. It depends and it depends. It depends. So that's something we want to have a consultation with first and find out what you're on, um, and why and all that stuff. And and some we can continue to take, some we have to wean. But so yeah, that's something, and that's a good question. But you can't stop a life-saving medication. Um, anyway, we don't have a chance to go any further. Please, please join the groups. Either join Health and Healing, Parasite, or CFC group. drlodi.com. Go there and join it, and then we can talk every week, all the time, directly, conversation. Yay, yay, yay! All right, listen, you guys, stay safe because we're it's not declared, but I think we're at war. Yeah. Anyway, so stay safe out there, and I'll see you all next week. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap.